Yes. Well, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thanks for coming out on this frosty, inclement evening. Oh, mild, inclement evening. We're having Florida weather, but
A little
thank
rainy,
you
a little rainy, mildly,
Right.
in anticipation of 22 hours of bad weather.
Well, welcome anyway. Whatever.
Got me all excited.
Yeah.
On that note,
So, yes, thanks for coming. My name is Drew Gibson.
and I'm Don Kuehlhorn. Happy holidays to you all. More than 180 years ago, Charles Dickens wrote a ghost story. Since it takes place around the time of Christmas, it is somewhat like an advent calendar. Oh, well, you know, those little paper calendars, often in the shape of a house or a tree with windows in them that open each day as you get closer and closer to Christmas Day.
Like an advent calendar, this story is a series of windows into the London of Dickens' time. It allows us to peep in on a variety of Christmas scenes. But all these pictures are for a purpose: to raise a ghost. The ghost of an idea. And may it haunt your lives pleasantly.
To begin with, Marley was dead. Oh, there was no doubt whatsoever about that. His burial was registered by the clergyman, the clerk, and the undertaker. Scrooge also signed the book, and his name was as good as any bill of exchange. Yes, old Marley was dead as a doornail.
Not that there's anything particularly dead about a doornail, at least not from my own experience. I would consider a coffin nail as the deadest piece of ironmongery that there is, but you get our meaning. Marley was dead, and Scrooge knew it.
Scrooge had been his business partner for I don't know how many years. He was his sole executor, sole administrator, sole friend, sole mourner, and even Scrooge was not so dreadfully cut up by the sad event of his parting.
Now, Scrooge never painted out Marley's name where it stood above the warehouse door. Scrooge and Marley. People new to the business sometimes called Scrooge Scrooge and sometimes Marley. He answered to both names. It was all the same to him, even though Marley was certainly and undeniably dead.
Now Scrooge, oh, but he was a tight-fisted one, a squeezing, grasping, wrenching, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner.
Hard and as sharp as flint, but without even a warming spark. Secret was he, solitary and self-contained as an oyster.
The cold within him froze his features, nipped his pointed nose, stiffened his gait, made his eyes red and his thin lips blue. He always cared about him his own low temperature, and no warmth could warm him, nor could any wintry weather chill him.
Once upon a time, upon a Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was cold, bleak, foggy weather, and although only striking 3, already quite dark. Now the door to Scrooge's office was open that he might keep his eye upon his clerk, who sat in a dismal little cell just beyond his own. Scrooge had a very small fire in his stove, but the clerk's fire was so very much smaller that it looked to be just one coal. Now, he dared not replenish it, for Scrooge kept a coal box in his office, and the clerk knew that should he go to it with his shovel, he might well return without his job. And so he tried to warm himself at his candle, but being a man of limited imagination, he failed in this attempt.
Suddenly a voice piped out of the cheeriest of tones, "A Merry Christmas to you, Uncle! God save you!" Well, it was Scrooge's nephew coming in unannounced. His voice was ruddy, his face was ruddy from his walk through the frosty afternoon, and his eyes sparkled with good health. "Ha ha! There you are! Merry Christmas!"
Bah, said Scrooge. A humbug.
"Christmas, a humbug, Uncle! You don't mean that, I am sure."
I do. Can't you see that I'm busy? Merry Christmas indeed. What right do you have to be merry anyways? You're poor enough.
Oh, come then. What right have you got to be so dismal? You're rich enough.
Bah! What's Christmas but a time for finding yourself 1 year older and not an hour richer? Why, it's a time for you, sir, to pay bills that you cannot afford. If I had my way, every idiot that goes about with a Merry Christmas upon his lips should be boiled in his own pudding.
Uncle!
See here, you keep Christmas your way and let me keep it mine.
Keep it? But that's just it. You don't keep it.
Let me leave it alone then. Much good may it do me. Much good may it do you or anyone.
Uncle, there are so many things that I have derived goodness from, but which I have not specifically profited. Christmas, I dare say, is among them. But Christmas time is such a good time, not only for its sacred, precious origin, but as a kind time, a pleasant time, a forgiving and charitable time. It is the only time I know of when men and women seem, by one common consent, to open their shuttered hearts freely and to think of the people around them as they all really are, fellow travelers on the same journey, which ends for all of us in the same place. Therefore, though it has never put a scrap of silver in my pocket, I believe that it has done me good and will do me good, and I say, God bless it!
To which sentiment, the clerk in his solitary little office beyond quietly seconded, "Hear, hear." But with a slap to his desk, Scrooge silenced that approbation.
Now, Uncle, don't be angry with me. I say, come dine with us tomorrow.
Eh? I'll see you buried first.
Uncle!
Good afternoon.
I want nothing from you, I ask nothing. Why cannot we be friends?
Good afternoon.
I am sorry with all my heart to find you so resolute. But I will keep my Christmas humor to the very last, so a Merry Christmas, Uncle! And a Happy New Year!
A humbug!
Well, the clerk let out the nephew with all his greetings of the season. He also let in two large, portly gentlemen who soon stood hats off in Scrooge's office. They had their notebooks in their hands and bowed to him. "Scrooge and Marley's, I believe," said one of the gentlemen, referring to his list. "Have I got the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley?"
It is no pleasure for me, sir, to be addressed by either of you. Marley's dead. He died 7 years ago. 7 years ago this very night.
Oh, our sincere condolences. We have no doubt that his generosity is well represented by his surviving partner.
Well, he was right about that, because Scrooge and Marley were of one mind when it came to generosity.
At this festive season of the year, it is more than usually desirable that there should be some slight provision for the poor and destitute, who suffer greatly at this present time. Many thousands are in want of common comforts and even necessities.
What, are there no prisons?
Plenty of prisons.
And the workhouses, are they still in operation?
Oh, they are. Oh, though I wish I could say they are not.
That's good. I was afraid something might have stopped their useful work.
Yes, as you say. But since they scarcely furnish to those unoffending multitudes any Christmas cheer of mind or body, we are endeavoring to raise a fund to buy the poor some food and drink and means of warmth. We chose this time because it is a time of all others when want is keenly felt and abundance rejoices. What shall I put you down for?
Nothing.
Oh, you wish to remain anonymous?
I wish to be left alone. Since you asked me what I wish, gentlemen, that is my answer. I do not make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. My taxes, my quite considerable taxes, go to help support the prisons and the workhouses. Those who are badly off must go there.
Well, many can't go, and many would rather die first.
No, they'd rather die. They'd best do it quickly and decrease the surplus population.
But surely, at this time of year...
It is not my business. It is enough for a man to understand his own business and not interfere with other people's. Mine occupies me greatly. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
At length the hour of shutting up arrived. With an ill will, Scrooge dismounted his stool, thus signaling to his clerk that the day was over. Instantly the clerk had on his hat and snuffed out the candle.
You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose.
Well, if it's quite convenient, sir.
It's not convenient, and it's not fair. Well, if I weren't to pay you, you'd think that pretty rough treatment now, wouldn't you?
Well, yes, sir, but it's only once a year, sir.
Yes, a fine excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. But I suppose you must have the whole day. Just see that you're in all the earlier the following morning.
And with that, the office was closed in a twinkling. The clerk, with his long white scarf dangling below his waist, for he posted no winter coat, ran home as hard as ever he could to join his family.
Then Scrooge took his usual melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern, and having scrutinized the papers and his banker's book, went home. He lived in chambers that had once belonged to his deceased partner, a gloomy pile of rooms at the end of a narrow yard. No one lived there but Scrooge, all the other rooms having been let out as offices. The yard was dark, and the fog and the frost hung thick about it all as Scrooge walked up to the door. Now, it is a fact that there was nothing at all particular about the knocker on the door of this house, except that it was somewhat large. Scrooge had, of course, seen it morning and evening during his residence there. It is also a fact that Scrooge had as little of what you might call fancy as any man in the financial district. But on that evening, having his key in the lock, Scrooge saw not a brass knocker, but Marley's face.
Marley's face, with a dismal light about it, like a bad lobster in a dark cellar. It was not angry or ferocious, and it looked at Scrooge the way Marley used to look at him, with his ghostly spectacles turned up on his ghostly forehead. The hair was curiously stirred as if by a current of hot air, and although the eyes were open, they were perfectly, horribly motionless.
As Scrooge stared fixedly at this phenomenon, it became a knocker again. Pooh, pooh, he said, and he closed the door with a bang. As he did so, the noise of the door closing resounded with echoes throughout the house, in all the rooms above and in all the cellars down below. As he closed the door, however, he looked at the back of it, half expecting to see Marley's pigtail sticking through. But there was nothing there. But still, he fastened the door extra carefully. Now he walked up the stairs to his apartment in the dark. Scrooge did not mind the dark, for darkness is cheap, and Scrooge liked that. But before he shut the door to his own rooms, he was sure to walk back and forth through the apartment, just to make sure. The sight of the face upon the door was enough to make him want to do that.
Everything was as it should be. Nobody under the table or sofa, a small fire in the grate, and his dressing gown hanging undisturbed in his closet, as it should. He locked himself in and took off his cravat, put on his dressing gown, slippers, and his nightcap, and sat down before the fire.
He sat in his chair, and as he leaned back, he noticed something odd. A disused bell hanging high up on the wall for some now forgotten purpose to elsewhere in the building began to swing of its own accord. With a sense of foreboding, Scrooge watched as it began to ring out loudly, and then he heard every other bell in the entire building also ringing in unison. And before he could make sense of this, he heard another noise deep, deep down below in the cellar, as if someone were dragging a large, heavy chain across the wine barrels down there.
The noise became louder and clearer on the floors below, then coming up the stairs, then coming down the hallway, coming straight towards his door. It came on and on, coming right through his heavy door, and a ghost passed into the room.
Scrooge stared at it in a mixture of astonishment and dread, and then he recognized the spectacles, the pigtail, the waistcoat, tights, and boots. It was Marley, or at least the ghostly remains of him. Scrooge also observed that his partner had what looked like a large chain clasped around his middle, a chain which was made out of deeds, ledgers, cash boxes, and padlocks, all wrought from some ghostly steel. It stretched out behind him. Scrooge saw what he saw, but he didn't believe it. He looked at the phantom. He looked through it, but still, and he felt its death-cold eyes upon him, but still he doubted it. He even noticed the kerchief, which held its chin up to its head, but he could not believe it. How now? What do you want with me?
Much, said a voice. And there was no doubt that it was the voice of Marley's.
Who are you?
In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley.
Yes, I am getting on, aren't I? First the door, now this.
You don't believe in me? You doubt your own senses? Why do you doubt what you yourself see and hear?
One's senses can so easily lie. After all, a slight disorder of the stomach could produce a mild hallucination. Why, you may be nothing more than an undigested bit of beef, a crumb of sour cheese, a blot of mustard, a fragment of underdone potato. Yes, you're probably more having to do with gravy than the grave.
Oh, yelled the ghost, holding up what chains it could and shaking them with a deafening rattle, while it howled out a piteous and dreadful wail. It was a shriek of rage, dismay, and the most heartbreaking sadness. Is this an undigested bit of beef?
Shaken, terrified out of his wits, Scrooge fell to his knees. Oh, Spirit, please, have mercy on me, I beg you. I do believe you, I do. But why do you come? Why do you walk the earth in this fashion?
It is required of every man that the spirit within him should walk among his fellow men. And if he does not go forth in life, he is condemned to do so after death. I cannot rest. I cannot linger anywhere now, because in life I, in my spirit, never walk beyond the narrow limits of our counting house. I was once foolish enough not to realize the vast usefulness we have to give to our fellow creatures. Any Christian loving soul working kindly knows this, but I did not. And you do not. Neither do you realize no amount of regret can make up for wanting life's precious opportunities for doing good. Now weary journeys stretch out before me forever.
But you always were a good man of business, Jacob.
Business? Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, they were my business. My trade was but a drop of water in what should have been the ocean of my real business.
At this, the ghost picked up the piece of that chain, a length of the chain, a chain he had unknowingly forged, link by icy link, throughout his life, and flung it heavily on the ground.
It is at this time of the year I suffer most. Why did I, as a man, never notice that blessed star? That star which led the wise men to the stable and which still shines as a beacon in the hearts of men? Was there no homes to which its light could have led me? Hear me!
Jacob, please take it easy on me.
I am here to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate. A chance which I have procured for you, Ebenezer.
Oh, you always were a good friend, Jacob. Thank you.
You will be haunted by 3 spirits.
Well, Jacob, not to be ungrateful, but that's the favor. I'd rather not.
Hear me! Shaking his chains at Scrooge. Without their visit, you cannot hope to shun the path I walk. Expect the first when the bell tolls 1.
And as Scrooge watched, the spirit that had been Jacob Marley vanished in the direction of the window. Pooh! A humbug! Was his nervous response. But drained from the interview, he retired to his bed without undressing and was asleep on the instant.
When Scrooge awoke, it was so dark that looking out between his bed curtains, he could scarcely distinguish the transparent window from the wall of his chamber. Suddenly, the church bell struck a deep, hollow, melancholy 1. Light flashed up in the room in an instant, and the curtains of the bed were drawn aside by a strange figure, one who was like a child and an old man at the same time. Its long hair was white with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle on it. It held a branch of fresh green holly in its hand, while in contrast its dress was trimmed with summer flowers. But the strangest thing about it was that from the crown of his head there sprang a clear, bright jet of light by which all of this was visible.
Are you the spirit whose coming was foretold?
I am. I am the ghost of Christmas past.
Long past?
For your past. Rise and walk with me. And the spirit's grasp, though gentle as a woman's hand, was not to be resisted. As I touch my hand here, you will not fall. And with that, he laid his hand upon Scrooge's heart.
As he did so, the two of them passed through the wall and into the busy thoroughfares of a city. By the frost in the air and the dressing of the shops, it was plain that here, too, it was Christmas time. The ghost stopped at a certain warehouse, which Scrooge immediately recognized as the place of his own apprentice shop. They passed through the walls and beheld a large, portly gentleman in an old-fashioned, high-powdered wig sitting behind a very high desk. And Scrooge cries out in great excitement, "Why, it's old Fezziwig! Bless his heart, it's Fezziwig, alive again!"
Mr. Fezziwig was just laying down his pen and to look up at the clock, which pointed to the hour of 7. Well, he rubbed his hands together, adjusted his capacious waistcoat, and laughed all over himself from his toes to his nose as he called out in a comfortable booming voice, "Oh, you there! Ha! Ebenezer Dick!"
And a living and moving picture of Scrooge's former self as a young man came briskly in, accompanied by his fellow apprentice. "Ah, Dick Wilkins, to be sure. There he is, good old Dick."
"Yo-ho, my boy, no more work here tonight. Clear away the lads, clear away, and let's have lots of room here."
It was done in a trice. Everything movable was packed off, the floor was swept and watered, the lamps were trimmed, fuel was heaped upon the fire, and the warehouse became as clean, bright, and snug a ballroom as you could wish. In came a fiddler with a music book and went up to the lofty desk, making an orchestra of it. In came Mrs. Fezziwig, one vast, substantial smile. And in came the 3 Miss Fezziwigs, beaming and lovable. And in came their 6 followers, whose hearts they broke.
In came the young men and women employed in the business, as well as the baker, the cook, the housemaid, and the milkmen. Oh, in they came one after another, some shyly, some boldly, some pushing, some pulling, and soon 20 couples were all dancing at once, down the middle and up again, round and round in various groupings. Oh, Fezziwig clapped his hands and cried out, "Well done!" to the fiddler, who bowed, plunged his face into a mug of beer, and continued.
There were dances, games, and more dances. There was cake, punch, cold roast, boiled ham, and mince pies. The high point of the evening was when the fiddler struck up that lively old air, Sir Roger de Coverley, and Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig stood out to dance as the head couple. Now, they had their work cut out for them because everyone there could dance and were not to be trifled with. But Mrs. Fezziwig, she was a worthy partner in every sense of the term.
And Mr. Fezziwig? Why, a light seemed to positively shine from his silk-stockinged calves. The couple shone in every part of the dance. The bow and curtsy, turn your partners, thread the needle. Why, old Fezziwig cut so deftly that his legs veritably twinkled.
When the clock struck 11, this domestic ball broke up. Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig took their stations at either side of the door and, shaking hands with each person individually, wished them all a Merry Christmas.
"A small matter," said the ghost, "to make these silly folks feel this full of gratitude. Oh, well, he has spent but 3 or 4 pounds of your mortal money at most. Is that so much that he deserves such praise?"
To this Scrooge objected, pointing out that it wasn't the money, but that Fezziwig had the power to make them happy or unhappy, to make their service light or burdensome, and that the happiness he gave was quite as great as if it cost a fortune. And saying so, Scrooge became thoughtful and still, for he would very much have liked to have said a few words to his own clerk just then.
Then the scene changed before them, faded and melted away. In the scene that emerged, Scrooge saw himself once more. Only this time he was older, in the prime of his life.
He sat in a parlor with music in the rooms behind him. He was sitting on a settee beside a fair young girl in a black dress, and in whose eyes were tears.
Oh, it matters little to you, very little. But I can see another has displaced me in your heart. I've seen your nobler aspirations fall one by one, Ebenezer, and until this master passion, gain of money, has engrossed you. That is your true love, is it not?
What are you saying? It's just that I have grown so much wiser, that's all, said this younger version of Scrooge. Have I changed toward you? Have I ever sought release from our engagement?
In words, no, never. But in a changed nature and in an altered spirit, yes. If you were free today, can I believe that you would again choose a poor girl such as I, who has no dowry? I know you regret it and repent of it, and so I release you, and I do so with a full heart for the love of him who once you were.
Spirit, must you? Let us leave this place at once, please.
These are shadows of things that have been. They are what they are. Do not blame me.
But please, really, remove me. I cannot bear it.
And as Scrooge struggled with the spirit, he was suddenly conscious of an irresistible drowsiness. He had barely time to notice that his bed was once again before him, and he collapsed upon it and sank into a heavy sleep.
Awakening in the middle of a prodigious snore, Scrooge sat up in bed to get his thoughts together. After his last encounter, he was quite prepared for anything, but he was not, by any means, prepared for nothing. He huddled under the bedclothes, the heavy curtains of his bed drawn tight together, and listened. He was waiting for some new specter to approach him, but there was nothing there, only silence. And then the bell again struck 1. He heard the crackling of a fire, and peering out, saw a light from under the door to his sitting room. He rose, cracked the door open to behold a fantastic transformation. Why, the walls and the ceiling were so hung with living green ivy, mistletoe, and holly that it looked a perfect grove. There was a mighty blaze roaring up the chimney, a fire more exuberant than any in Scrooge's day, and its light reflected off the holly leaves like so many hundreds of tiny mirrors.
Heaped upon the floor, forming a kind of throne, were cooked turkeys, geese, game, great joints of beef, suckling pigs, and wreaths of sausages. There were mince pies, plum puddings, chestnuts, cherry-cheeked apples, oranges, pears, immense cakes, and great bowls of punch. Oh, such a glory! And in an easy state upon the couch sat a giant, wonderful to see, who, as soon as he noticed Scrooge peeping around the door, bellowed out to him, "Come in, man! Oh, come in and know me! Better, I am the ghost of Christmas present!"
Scrooge entered meekly and beheld the great figure who nearly touched the high ceiling, and who was clad in one simple deep green robe trimmed by white fur. The garment hung loosely on his great frame, so his broad chest was bare, as were his feet. A wreath of holly was on his brow, and in his hand he held an upraised horn, like a drinking horn or a horn of plenty, but from which glowed a fire that sparkled out golden, joyous particles of light.
"Oh, do you know me or any of my family? There have been over 1,800 of us, you know."
"I do not."
Come, touch my robe."
Scrooge did so, and he and the ghost passed invisible through the walls and out into the streets of the city on a Christmas morning. That it was Christmas Day was clear from the bustle of the people on the streets and their good humor. Men shoveled snow from the rooftops and doorsteps. Children laughed, and steam billowed out from those few shops still open. On these pleasant scenes, the giant sprinkled the blessings of his torch, making them pleasanter still.
Invisible, Scrooge and the giant passed through neighborhoods filled with Christmas scenes until they arrived at the street where Scrooge's clerk lived with his family. Coming to the house of Bob Cratchit, for that was the name of his clerk's, as Scrooge's clerk, the giant blessed the house with the sprinklings of his torch. Now imagine that. blessing the house of the miserable Bob Cratchit, who made but 15 shillings a week.
They passed through the house, to the wall of the house, to observe the complete picture of one family's Christmas. They saw a busy Mrs. Cratchit, dressed in an old gown made fresh with new ribbons, for ribbons are cheap and make a good show for sixpence. She and Belinda, the second Cratchit daughter, were laying the tablecloth, while Master Peter plunged a fork into a saucepan of potatoes. At age 14, he felt quite the grown-up and was nearly choking in the high-starch collar of his father's that he had borrowed for the occasion.
The two smaller Cratchits, a boy and a girl, came running in, screaming that outside of the neighborhood baker shop they had smelt the goose and known it for their own. Basking in the luxurious thoughts of sage and onions, these young Cratchits danced around the table, whooping in anticipation of the dinner soon to come.
"Whatever has got your precious father and your brother, Tiny Tim?" said Mrs. Cratchit. "And Martha, why, she weren't even this late last year."
"Oh, it's Martha, hurrah!" said one of the smaller Cratchits as Martha appeared at the door. "Oh, wait till you smell the goose," they said, as they danced around her, chattering excitedly, seeming to be everywhere all at once. She apologized for being late, but as an apprentice to a shop that made bonnets and fancy stuff, she had had to work late that night before and that morning.
"Well, as long as you've come, dear, that's the thing."
Finally, Bob Cratchit, Scrooge's clerk, came in with 3 feet of scarf hanging down before him. His threadbare clothes were darned and brushed as to look as good as they could. His son Tiny Tip rode upon his shoulder, but alas, he carried a little crutch in his hand, and his body was supported by an iron brace.
Martha ran into her father's arms while the 2 young Cratchits hustled Tiny Tim away to hear the pudding singing as it boiled away in the copper kettle. "How was church, dear? How did little Tim behave?"
"Oh, as good as gold and better. He gets thoughtful, you know, sitting by himself so much, and he thinks the strangest things you've ever heard. He told me coming home that he hoped the people in the church saw him because he was a cripple, and it might be pleasant for them to reflect upon his Christmas day and upon him who made the lame beggars walk and the blind men see."
The short silence that followed was broken quickly by an active little crutch tapping upon the floor as Tim and the others came back. Tiny Tim took up his stool near the fire while Master Peter and the 2 ubiquitous young Cratchits set off to fetch the goose, with which they soon returned in high procession.
Mrs. Cratchit had the gravy hissing hot.
Peter mashed the potatoes with great vigor,
Miss Belinda sweetened up the applesauce,
while Martha dusted off the plates.
Bob placed Tiny Tim beside him in the corner of the table, and the 2 young Cratchits set chairs for everybody.
At last, all was set, and grace was said, followed by a breathless pause as Mrs. Cratchit began to carve. When the long-expected issue of steam and juices gushed forth, a murmur of admiration arose all around the board. Even Tiny Tim was so excited that he beat on the table with his handle of his knife and feebly cried, "Hurrah!"
Now, there was never such a goose, nor well cooked. Its tenderness, flavor, size, and cheapness were the themes of universal admiration. Eked out by the applesauce and mashed potatoes, it was a sufficient dinner for all 8 of them. Indeed, surveying one small fleck left upon a bone, Mrs. Cratchit laughed and said they hadn't eaten it all. The youngest Cratchits in particular were steeped in sage and onions to their eyebrows. Then the plates were cleared and Mrs. Cratchit rose to take the pudding up. Soon there was a great rush of steam from the kitchen. Well, a Christmas pudding is, as you must know, bits of dried fruit, meat, breadcrumbs, spices, and flour, all wrapped together in a cloth and set in to boil in a big pot. When Mrs. Cratchit opened the big copper kettle, the released steam smelled like at first wash day. That was the cloth. Then, as the pudding was turned out, the smells of a pastry shop and an eating house mixed in with the steam, forming a sweet aroma that billowed out to an army of expectant noses. Smiling proudly, Mrs. Cratchit entered with the pudding. Like a bespectacled cannonball, a blaze and a half-quarter cup of ignited brandy, bedight with a Christmas holly.
Oh, what a wonderful pudding! Bob Cratchit proclaimed it to be the greatest success of Mrs. Cratchit since their marriage. Everybody had something to say about it, but nobody said, or even thought, that it was at all a small pudding for so large a family. They would have blushed to think it. Well, at last the dinner was all done. The cloth was cleared and the fire made up. Apples and oranges were put upon the table and a shovelful of chestnuts on the fire. And the whole family drew near the hearth. At Bob Cratchit's elbow stood the family's complete collection of glass, 2 tumblers and a custard cup without a handle. Into these golden goblets, Bob served out a hot punch with a beaming smile, while the chestnuts on the fire sputtered and crackled noisily. And then Bob proposed a toast.
A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears, which sentiment was echoed by all the family, ending with a thin,
God bless us, everyone, from
Yes.
Tiny Tim.
Yes, he sat upon his little stool, very close to his father's side, and Bob held his withered little hand in his as if he dreaded that he might be taken from him. It was a scene so tender that to it no one could have been immune.
Spirit, I say, tell me, will Tiny Tim live?
I see a vacant chair, a crutch without an owner, if these shadows remain unaltered by the future.
Nay, kind spirit, nay, say he will be spared.
Why? What of it? If it be so like to die, he had best do it soon and decrease the population.
Scrooge bent his head down before this rebuke, but he raised it suddenly, for he had heard his own name spoken.
To Mr. Scrooge, to the founder of the feast.
The founder of the feast, indeed, cried Mrs. Cratchit, her cheeks reddening. I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast upon.
My dear, shh, the children. It's Christmas Day.
It could only be on Christmas Day, I am sure, that one would drink the health of such an odious, stingy, unfeeling piece of flint as is Mr. Scrooge. You know it's true, Robert. No one knows it better than you.
My dear, it is Christmas Day. Join my toast.
All right. I'll drink his health, but for your sake and the sake of the day, not his. Long life to him. There. I have no doubt, but he'll be making very merry today. It took a few minutes for the shadow caused by the mere mention of Scrooge's name to pass from the little scene. But then they were 10 times happier than before, only to be done with Mr. Scrooge, the ogre of the family. They chatted of work, of happy memories, and of future hopes. And as they spoke, the chestnut and the punch went round and round. Tiny Tim gave them a song about a child lost, traveling in the snow, and with his plaintive little voice he sang it very well.
There was nothing of high mark in any of this. Oh, they were not a handsome family. They were not well dressed. Their clothes were even scanty. But they were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, contented with the time, and when they faded from view, Scrooge had his eye thoughtfully upon them, and especially on Tiny Tim.
And then the scene dimmed, vanished, and Scrooge was surprised to hear a very hearty laugh. He was further surprised to recognize it as that of his own nephew. And then he was surprised all the more to find himself in a bright, gleaming room with the giant smiling by his side.
Now, it is fair, even with noble adjustment, that while disease and sorrow can be infectious, there is nothing in this world so irresistibly contagious as laughter. When Scrooge's nephew laughed, his wife laughed as heartily, and he and the friends all laughed as well. And he said Christmas was a humbug. As I live.
More shame to him, Fred, said his wife.
Oh, he's a comical old fellow, that's the truth, and not so pleasant as he might be. But I have nothing to say against him, for For who suffers most with his ill will? Himself, always himself. Here he takes it in his head to dislike us, won't come to dine with us, and what is the result? He loses out on a very good dinner.
And to this, everyone concurred, having just consumed the dinner in question, and it was very good indeed.
I mean to give him the same chance every year, whether he likes it or not. By this time, Fred, his wife, their friends and relatives had clustered around the fireplace, and after singing some songs, they played at games. For it is good to be a child sometimes, and never better than at Christmas, whose mighty founder was, after all, a child himself. Oh, they played blind man's buff, and on a voyage I did go, and who, what, and where.
Scrooge became so engaged in these guessing games that he forgot why he was there in the first place, and he forgot that his voice made no impression upon their ears. He sometimes called his guesses out loud, and very often he guessed right. His attitude had changed to such a remarkable degree that he begged like a child not to be taken from the scene just yet. Just 1/2 hour more, Spirit, only that? For they had begun to play a game of yes or no. His nephew had thought of something, and the rest were trying to figure out what it was by having him answer their questions with a simple yes or no. The fire of questioning to which Fred was exposed showed that he was thinking of an animal, a live animal, a disagreeable live animal that sometimes grunted and sometimes growled. Yes, it lived in London. No, it didn't live in a zoo. Yes, it walked about the streets, but no, it wasn't a horse, or a dog, or a cow, or a tiger, or a bear. Fred was so tickled by his friend's bepuzzlement that at each new question he burst into a fresh roar of laughter. And at last, one of his wife's sisters cried out,
I know what it is, Freddie. It is your Uncle Scrooge.
which it certainly was, and all laughed over it. Some, however, objected that the answer to, "Is it a bear?" should have been a yes. Ebenezer Scrooge had become so light of heart by all of this that, watching and listening to all this, had become so light of heart that he would have drunk the health of the entire company had they been sensible of him. Then the scene misted and passed off, and he and the spirit were again upon their travels.
They traveled far and saw much, visiting many homes and also workplaces. They visited places that were busy and places that were lonely, but always they saw people keeping Christmas, even with only to share the blessings of the day. The Spirit stood by sick beds, stood amidst poverty. He stood near struggling, desperate men, and all were made lighter in their hearts by the blessings of his torch. In the workhouse, hospital, or jail, in misery's every refuge, the Spirit left his blessings and taught Scrooge his precepts.
Then, just before the bell tolled, the giant brought from within the many folds of his robe 2 ragged children, who knelt and clutched at the skirts of his garment. Meager, yellow, wolfish, miserable, wretched, and alone, these 2 appeared immune from the blessings of the giant's torch.
Their bodies, wherein youth and grace belonged, had been pinched and twisted into things abject. In their faces, where hopeful angels might have sat enthroned, now lurked devils and glowered. The perverse chance mutations of creation had never formed monsters half as horrible as these.
"Spirit!" choked Scrooge. "These children, whose are they? Are they yours?"
They're man's. The girl is want, the boy is ignorance. Beware of them, heed them, and abide the doom they will bring forth.
"But is there no shelter for them? No refuge?"
Are there no prisons? Are there all the workhouses all full?
And the clock struck 12. Scrooge looked about, but the ghost and the wretched children were gone. As the last stroke of the bell ceased to vibrate, he remembered that the prediction of old Marley, that there would be 3 spirits. And lifting up his eyes, he beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground towards him.
The phantom approached slowly, silently, It was shrouded in a deep black garment which concealed its head, face, and form, leaving nothing visible save one outstretched hand.
Am I in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come? I think I fear you above the others, but as I intend to live to be another man from what I once was, I am willing to learn from you. Will you not speak to me?
But it gave no reply. Its hand only pointed straight before them, and as Scrooge looked, the business district of the city seemed to spring up before them. And there they were. They were in the very heart of it, at the corner of the exchange. The spirit stopped beside a little knot of businessmen and pointed to them. Scrooge knew these men, for he had made a point of always standing well in their esteem, strictly from a business point of view, you understand. He now advanced towards them to listen, and he assumed to learn from their talk.
No, I don't know much about it, said a great fat man. I only know that he's dead.
Oh, well, when did he die? Inquired a red-faced gentleman.
Last night.
Oh, I thought he'd never die. But say, what is done with all his money?
I haven't heard. But he hasn't left it to me, I know that.
With this pleasantry, the subject was closed and conversation moved on to other topics. Scrooge was surprised that the spirit should direct him to apparently so trivial a conversation, but feeling that there must be some purpose to it, he tried to make out what it could be. While pondering this, he looked about for his own image. But another man stood in his accustomed corner. Well, this did not bother him because he had been turning over in his mind that he would set up alter his way of life. And he hoped that the changes to the scene before him confirmed the carrying out of his newborn resolutions.
Scrooge and the spirit then left the busy street and traveled into an obscure part of town. They went far into an infamous quarter and came to a low, mean, beetling old shop where scrap iron, bones, bottles, and rags were bought. Inside, there was a gaunt, gray-haired rascal of great age who sat there smoking his pipe among piles of bones, iron, rusty hardware, and mountains of dirty rags. Scrooge and the Phantom came into the presence of this man just as a woman slunk in with a heavy bundle. She looked to be one of the lower sorts of cleaning women or housemaids.
Well, what do you got to sell me?
And as the woman swung her bundle down to the ground, where Jo, as was her name, knelt down to examine it.
Well, you look like you got some good picking here. Look like.
Well, it's in my opinion, if him who owned these things wanted them to stay in place when he was laid out, he should have been more natural during his lifetime. Then he wouldn't have been left alone to gasp out his last. Wicked old miser. So, what's the value of it, eh, Joe?
What you got here, huh? Some bed curtains? Bed curtains? Rings and all? You mean you took those with him lying there?
I certainly did, and why not? Why, bed curtains is one thing he won't be needing.
No.
And besides, who's the worse for the loss of a few of these things? Not a dead man, sure.
No.
Now, how about them blankets?
Oh, wow. Oh, Cole, you are someone taking them right off his body.
I certainly did. Yes, where he's going, blankets is something else he won't be needing, I guarantee you. And here, his shirt, his best one, not an old or threadbare place in it. Why, they'd have wasted it, sure, dressing the likes of him with it to be buried in.
You took off his own shirt.
Yes, I did. This is the end of it, don't you see? He frightened everyone away while he was alive, so as to profit us when he was dead.
Yes, indeed. You have a fine head for business, and that's the truth.
Scrooge watched and listened to this in a sort of horror as the two vultures sat there huddled around the dead man's things. Spirit, I see, I understand. The case of the unhappy man they've robbed might well have been my own. My life did tend in that way before.
Then abruptly, once more the scene changed, and Scrooge stood before a bare, uncurtained bed, pale in the waning afternoon light. On it, unwept, unwatched, uncared for, was the body of the plundered, unknown man. It lay in a dark, empty house, in a lonely room, its face in shadow, with not a man, woman, or child to say that they remembered him, or how he had been kind to them in this or that way. There were no prayers, or sobs, or muffled, respectful talking, just the noise of a cat in the hall and the gnawing of rats beneath the hearth.
Spirit, is there no person who has some feelings of tenderness for this poor man's death? Show me that person and their emotion, please, I beg you.
The spirit hesitated, and then spread his dark robes before him like a wing. Withdrawing it, Scrooge beheld a poor room by daylight, and with a mother and child within. The woman showed every sign of anxious eagerness as she hurried to the door to her husband, whose own young face was etched with the strain of worry.
The news, she asked, the news, is it good or bad? Is he determined to see us ruined, or will he relent?
And a smile slowly broke onto the husband's face. Well, he is all past relenting, I dare say. Apparently the housekeeper was telling the truth yesterday when he said he was too ill to see me. I thought he refused to hear my request for a day's grace out of plain meanness. But it seems that he was at that moment dying.
To which the woman bowed her head and softly whispered, "Thank God."
I don't know to whom our debt would be transferred, but it would be hard indeed to find another creditor as merciless as he.
And the faces of the children in the room, who stood clustered nearby, brightened. They could not understand what they were hearing, but they could sense that theirs was now a happier home for this man's death. But that was the only emotion that the spirit could show to Scrooge. Nay, nay, spirit, is there no tender concern connected with a man's death? Let me see some feelings of tenderness, I beg you.
Once more the scene misted over, changed, and again they were in the dwelling of the Cratchit family. Mother and daughters were seated around the fire doing piecework. The little Cratchits were sitting in one corner as still as stones while Peter read to them from a book. And he took a little child and he set them in the midst of them. But Peter stopped abruptly as his mother laid down her work on the table and put her hand into her face.
It's nothing, said Mrs. Cratchit. It's the needlework of these colors hurt my eyes.
But it wasn't the colors, poor woman. It was Tiny Tim.
Now, we mustn't show weak or teary eyes to your father, not for the world. He should be home by now, shouldn't he? It's past time, isn't it?
Past time, Peter. I think he's walking slower than he used to. He used to walk so very fast. Tim on his shoulder. He was so light that there was no trouble. No trouble at all. As he spoke, Bob Cratchit came to the door in his long white scarf, which he sorely needed in the cold. His tea was ready for him, and they all tried to see who could help him to the tea the most. The little Cratchits pressed their cheeks to his, and as if to say, "Don't be sad, Father." But Bob spoke pleasantly to the family, and surveying the work upon the table, praised the industry of Mrs. Cratchit and the girls.
Did you go today, Robert? Did you see it?
Yes, my dear, and it will do you good to see how sweet a place it is. And you'll see it often, I believe, for I promised him that we would walk there on Sundays. My little child, my little child. He broke down in tears. He couldn't help it. If he could have helped it, he and his child would have been further apart than perhaps they were. Bob went upstairs to a little room that was lighted and hung cheerfully with Christmas. Poor Bob. He sat down in a chair next to the cold little form, and when he had composed himself, kissed the cold, still little face.
Witnessing this scene, Scrooge felt a sudden, sharp pang of apprehension. Spirit, this is important. I need to know, What was that man we saw lying on that curtainless bed?
But the ghost did not speak. Instead, the scene misted and rearranged itself, this time into a bleak, dismal churchyard. Standing among graves, the spirit pointed one spectral finger down to one.
Spirit, before I draw nearer to the stone, please answer me this. Are these the shadows of things that will be, or the shadows of things that may be only?
But the ghost did not answer. It only pointed down at the grave.
The spirit, the course of a man's life foretells certain ends. It's true, but if the course be changed, the end will change also, won't it? Say it is thus with what you're about to show me.
But the spirit remained mute and immovable, pointing still. Scrooge crept closer towards the spot, trembling as he went, and read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge.
And am I that man who lay upon that bed? Oh no, Spirit, no, I am not that man. I will not be that man I might have been. I will change my life. I will honor Christmas in my heart and keep it all the year. Oh, please, promise me that I may yet change these shadows you have shown me. And holding up his hands in a desperate plea for one last chance to reverse his fate, Scrooge noticed that the phantom's hood and dress had changed. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost.
Yes, and the bedpost was his own, the bed was his own, the room was his own, and happier of all the time before him was his own. It was not too late. Running to the window, he opened it and put out his head. No fog, no mist, no night, only clear, bright, stirring golden day. He shouted down to a boy in Sunday clothes upon the street.
What's today?
Today? Why, let me say, it's Christmas Day.
It's Christmas. Ha, hello, I haven't missed it. Ha ha. And he called out again, young man, I say, do you know the poulterer's shop 2 streets over?
Why, yes, I should hope I do, sir.
Yes, they're remarkable. Most intelligent. Well, do you know whether they've sold the prize turkey that was hanging in the window?
What, the big one that's as big as me? Why, it's hanging there now.
It is. Ha! Oh, delightful fellow. Ha. Go and tell them that I shall buy it. Come back with the man, and I will give you a shilling. Bring him back in less than 5 minutes, and I'll give you a half-crown.
And the boy was off through the snowy streets like a shot.
I'll send it to Bob Cratchit. He shan't know who sent it. Why, it's twice the size of Tiny Tim. And Scrooge laughed to himself to think at such a joke as this played on Bob Cratchit. There never was. Later, he dressed himself in his best and went out into the streets where people were pouring forth to spend the day with friends and loved ones. As he walked up through the bustling streets, Scrooge regarded everyone with a delighted smile. 3 or 4 good-humored fellows, not recognizing him, said,
Good morning, sir. Merry Christmas to you.
And Scrooge said afterwards that of all the sweet sounds he had ever heard, those words were the sweetest.
He headed towards his nephew's house, and when he reached it, he passed back and forth in front of the house several times before he had the courage to go up and knock on the door. Why, bless my soul, who's this?
It's I, your uncle. I've come to dinner. Will you let me in?
Let him in. It's a mercy he didn't shake his arm off. He was at home in 5 minutes. Nothing could have been heartier. Everything looked the same as it had seen it with the giant. A wonderful party, a wonderful dinner, wonderful games, and a wonderful oneness of hearts.
Well, Scrooge was early in the office the next day. Oh, it would be fun if only he could be there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming in late. Ha ha! That would be capital. And the clock struck 9. No Bob. It struck 1/4 No Bob.
Bob Cratchit was a full 15 minutes and a half behind his time when he came in. Bob's hat was off before he opened the door, his scarf too. He was at his stool in a jiffy and driving away with his pen as if he were trying to overtake 9 o'clock.
Hello, 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 growled Scrooge, trying to replicate his old accustomed voice. What do you mean by coming in here at this time of day?
I'm very sorry, sir. I am behind my time.
Yes, you are. Step this way, if you please.
Well, it's only once a year, sir. It shall not be repeated. The truth is, I was making rather merry yesterday, sir.
Well, now let me tell you, my young friend, I am not going to stand for this sort of thing any longer. And therefore, he said, poking Bob in the ribs, I will have to raise your salary.
Bob Trebles grimaced and stood back a bit. For a moment, he had the idea of knocking Scrooge down and calling out for a straight-waist jacket.
But then Scrooge clapped him on the back with an earnestness that could not be mistaken. A Merry Christmas, Bob. A merrier Christmas than I have given you in many a year. I will raise your salary, that I will, and I will do what I can to help your family. And to that end, we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop. That's hot punch. Make up the fires, Bob Cratchit, and before you dot another I, go out on the company's account and buy us some more coal.
Scrooge was as good as his word and then some to Tiny Tim, who did not die. He was like a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he did not matter to Scrooge, for his own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him.
And although it may sound strange, Scrooge had no further meetings with spirits, for he had no need. Moreover, it was always said of him that of any man living, it was Scrooge who knew how to keep Christmas well. May that truly be said of all of us. And as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.